Happy Friday, everyone. How are we all? Probably considerably better than Keir Starmer at the moment. So, it's all getting very messy. Um, so weeks there say it all comes down to May. No, I think that ship sailed. I mean, the things it could come down to, I don't see how it can carry on at all. I mean, for a while, I don't think he's been able to carry on till the next election. I don't think there's any way back for him as of certainly after Christmas. Basically, what needed to happen for me, I mean, last September, after all that reshuffle nonsense, and actually that's also, all sorts of shit was happening last September, if you remember. And I said at the time, he needed to have a good clear out. They were having that big reshuffle. Angela Rayner had to resign over the tax thing, and that somehow triggered a massive reshuffle that was clearly in the planning anyway. And I said at the time, this is all a nonsense. This is a distraction. The problem was not in cabinet. The problem was in number 10. And they needed a huge clear out then. If they'd have had a clear out, here's the way it can work. So if you think about lots of people have lots of different ideas about what ultimately is the problem that's led to Labour being in the shit. It ultimately comes down to this, the winter fuel allowance policy, right? That completely tanked their credibility with the public. Because here's the thing, like, there's an element to which people see that the Conservatives screwed them over and Labour aren't doing anything to fix it. Now, if that's all the problem was, it's one of these things where you just hang tight. You hang tight because they will see it, right? They will see it. But it's not that. It's not just that Labour don't look like they're doing enough. It's that they think Labour are actively doing what the Conservatives did, screwing them over. The winter fuel, even though that winter fuel policy has now been massively changed, so no one has to deal with it anymore, as it was at the time, it shows an intent. Same with the PIP cuts. There's a couple of other things with different groups of voters they're not happy about. It looks like you could say to yourself, Labour are going after this group of people. Whether it be pensioners or farmers or trans people or people on disabilities. There's a narrative builds up of Labour are targeting those groups of people, right? And that's difficult to get away from because the intent was there. And I don't think Starmer can come back from it again. So even if he can get rid of, and I'm going to do I've already done a video actually on, sort of the end of Starmer now. I mean, the video is basically, is it time to get the lettuce out again? Because I think it's really, there was quite a good piece in The Guardian today. I think I'll put a link in the description below. It's quite a good piece. It made the point. Now, we don't know, we don't know what the balance of opinion is. We know there are some Labour MPs that says, that's it, it's done, we need him gone. We know there are some Labour MPs who are calling for Starmer to have a proper clear out in number 10. So they're prepared to stick by Starmer as long as he gets better political advice. So I don't know where the balance of opinion is within the parliamentary party. What I do know is that there are Labour MPs who are saying, not openly saying, but they are saying to journalists off the record that they will move to get rid of Starmer as soon as someone makes a move. Now, why isn't anyone making a move? It might be that actually the media are embellishing it and there isn't that much appetite just yet to get rid of Starmer right now. But it could be this. Angela Rayner is an obvious replacement, but she's not ready because she's still, the HMRC investigation still going on. So although if Starmer resigns, she would have to move. She can't just go, shit, I've missed my chance. She's going to have to stand. That would be hanging over her until she, I mean, everyone expects her to be cleared. But until she's cleared, the thing that caused her to resign as Deputy Prime Minister is still there. So how can she credibly say that she should be Prime Minister if in her own, remember, she resigned, although obviously it would have been expected of her anyway, she still resigned. So if I was a journalist and Angela Rayner was standing for the leadership right now, I'd be saying to her, why do you think you would be a suitable prime minister when in your own estimation you were not a suitable deputy prime minister? So she's vulnerable at the moment. It could be that that vulnerability remains. I mean, ideally what you would want is a whiter than white leader. But Starmer was whiter than white. They didn't manage to get anything on him. They tried for years. They still try and push the Durham Curry thing now. That's all they had. They had nothing on him, and yet they've still turned the public against him anyway. I mean, that's still his own fault for not punching back, but still, I think Rayner would punch back better. So it's not she's doomed. But that might explain why Rayner hasn't moved yet, because she needs Starmer to stay in place until the HMRC thing's done. And I don't know when that... It shouldn't take too long. I mean, it didn't take that long for Nadim Zahawi, and he were bloody guilty. So I can't imagine... I don't know why it's taken as long as it is, quite frankly. Then there's Wes Streeting. Now, something The Guardian said that was very, very interesting and I'd not considered. Because I was thinking to myself, isn't this the best time for Streeting to make a move? Right? As long as he thinks Labour MPs are ready now to get rid of Starmer. Because this is perfect for Streeting, surely. Burnham's out the way. Rayner is vulnerable. She's not out the way. She would absolutely... I'm sure she'd toss her hat into the ring. But it's not ideal timing for her. So this is arguably good timing for Streeting, right? But something in The Guardian, and this has actually raised my estimation of Streeting if it's true, and they've suggested that his own friendship with Peter Mandelson, because, you know, Streeting's basically what you would call centre-left, right? Well, centre-left, to be fair. So anyone around the centre or centre-left is inevitably going to have been mentored by Peter Mandelson, because Peter Mandelson is like the dog's bollocks when it comes to political shenanigans, right? He is basically, he is Machiavellian in every sense of the term, positive and negative, right? So anyone round there in politics will inevitably have been mentored by, or if they're any good, like Streeting is, would have been mentored by Mandelson. So Streeting apparently is worried that that friendship becomes a liability, which is interesting, because that shows that Streeting is putting the party and the government ahead of his own ambition. If he's prepared to even think that maybe it's not a good idea for him to stand, that shows that he's seen the bigger picture. So that's made him go up in my estimation if that is true. So that might be why he's not making a move, because he's actually thinking to himself, if Starmer goes because of... I mean, Starmer wasn't as close to Mandelson as Streeting is, for example. You know, he just appointed him ambassador, that's it. And, you know, and Mandelson, of course, has always been an advisor to Labour and Starmer, but beyond that, there wasn't really much. So if Starmer has to go because he got too close to Mandelson, then Streeting will be thinking, well, how's it going to look if I get the seat? They say Streeting gets in, this country is over. No, I'm pretty sure if Reform UK get in, this country is over. Although what comes out at the other end is another matter. Urban Legends thinking they're waiting for Rayner case before making a move. That seems to be the most likely. Because if Streeting is doubting his own suitability now, based on the Mandelson angle, that becomes interesting, because it means this. If Streeting decides that he shouldn't succeed Starmer, he can go to Rayner and crack a deal, right? Streeting and Rayner together represent a massive number of Labour MPs. Together, they are a big unifying force, right? That could mean that you have an ideal situation where Starmer gets the tap on the shoulder, resigns, and is replaced almost immediately. Because what you ideally need is for Labour MPs not to have a leadership contest. You want them to have a coronation. Decide amongst themselves within a week. if you can just have it so that only Rayner gets the enough nominations, that's it, it's done. The rest of the messy process doesn't need to happen. Say perhaps a candidate from the soft left might fare better because they won't be so close to the Prince of Darkness. Again, I think people are over-egging just how big this Mandelson thing is. The reason why the Mandelson thing is so damaging, because remember, Labour haven't tried to shield him at all. You know, at the end of the day, he was vetted. He wasn't vetted by Starmer or McSweeney. This wasn't like when Boris Johnson put Yevgeny Lebedev in the House of Lords, when the vetting process said, yeah, he shouldn't be in the House of Lords, and Boris Johnson says, I want him in anyway. That's not what happened here. I mean, we'll wait to see for all the details. There's certain things we don't know. But as far as can be told, at the end of the day, he was vetted. If you remember the process, as soon as what's happened here is Mandelson lied during the vetting process, right? That's clear. Why did he lie? It wasn't to screw Labour over. It was because he thought the lies wouldn't come out as long as the Epstein files didn't come out. And he thought that Donald Trump, I mean, it was quite clear at the time that Donald Trump did not want the Epstein files coming out, right? So he thought he was safe. Then Congress started to move to release the Epstein files. This is back in like September-ish, wasn't it? And you say that he was then asked, is there anything in there that's going to cause shit? And he said yes. So they sacked him, right? So at that point, so he wasn't trying to screw anyone over as such, other than the people he's already screwed over, as we can see in the Epstein files. You know, Mandelson came out of it at that. I don't think he would have told them what was in there, but he did say, I mean, I did a video on it at the time, so even I knew about it. Mandelson had said, yeah, there's shit in there that's going to get us into a lot of trouble. So they sacked him. And then what happened when we found out exactly what it was? Again, there's no cover-up. Labour have handed over like a dossier to the police. So they're actually cooperating with it. So you can't really criticise Labour other than the fact that some people never wanted Mandelson appointed in the first place because they thought he was too risky. And he was always going to be risky. The thing with Peter Mandelson is you will get a sharp, whatever political job you want him to get done, he will get done for you. But it's only a matter of time before he bites you on the arse. I mean, that's what you're going to get with him. It's like having a snake to keep the mice down. It's only a matter of time before they bite you, right? So I'm voting Rayner if she goes for it. She isn't to be underestimated, but only if most of the current cabinet stays the same. I mean, that won't happen. Well, I don't know about most, but there will inevitably have to be a clear out because you always will. She'll have her own ideas about who she wants. Anyway, some people will be, you know, there'll be certain people who will be. All I would hope of Rayner is that she doesn't get tribal about it. That's the danger. I've no particular reason to believe she will. She has worked as a pretty good team player since becoming deputy leader. So, but there is always a danger with any politician that they get tribal, because that's what sunk Starmer. The Mandelson thing, the reason the Mandelson thing is big is because Starmer is weak. If Labour were still riding high in the polls, this would all be on Mandelson. This would have been a case of he lied in the vetting process, Labour sacked him as soon as he said, yeah, there's shit going to come out, and then they followed it up with the police. That would be it. It would be a storm in a teacup. It would still be a big scandal because Peter Mandelson looks like he's literally betrayed the government, the last government, right? The last Labour government, sorry. So it would still be a huge political scandal. He's basically the biggest crook in Labour government history by the looks of it. But it would be centred on Mandelson. This is like Partygate. If you remember Partygate, at the time that broke, I said at the time, the timing was very suspicious because whoever was sitting on all the Partygate stuff had sat on it for months. Why didn't they release it to the press earlier? Because they feared it would bounce off Boris Johnson while he was still popular. So with Partygate, whoever was sitting on all that information waited until Boris Johnson was vulnerable. When was Partygate reported on? After the Owen Paterson scandal. The Owen Paterson scandal weakened Boris Johnson, chink in the armour. It was literally straight after the Owen Paterson scandal that Partygate was reported on, if you remember. And it's the same thing here. You know, this is damaging now. Okay, it wouldn't have looked good at any time, but it's particularly damaging now because Starmer's already weak. No one's willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. There's no one out there going, oh, well, you know, he did his best and he was lied to and stuff like that. No one, because people hate Starmer. So it is what it is. Say, first female PM and leader of the opposition. Who? What? I think Margaret Thatcher was the first female PM. And also the first female leader of the opposition. What is this? Are people forgetting about all the female prime ministers and leaders of the opposition we've had? Oh, you mean first time we've had a female PM and leader of the opposition at the same time? If you want to make anything of that, yes. Doubt anyone moves Red Ed. This be Ed Miliband. He's on top of his brief, and McSweeney was constantly briefing against him. Yeah, the one thing. So when we talk about like Blue Labour, whom Morgan McSweeney has infected Number 10 with, when we talk about Blue Labour having free run of Number 10, the one area where it's not actually true is climate policy, because for whatever reason, they are anti-climate action. I don't know that they're strongly anti-climate action, but they're certainly not about strong climate action, so we put it that way. They, for example, didn't want Keir Starmer to go to COP. They wanted to move Ed Miliband out of his position. So they haven't got their own way. It's like, and again, so Starmer has clearly only listened to them on social policy, which is what he thinks is their area. He hasn't like automatically listened to them on everything. But unfortunately, the problem is, it's not that Blue Labour's in Number 10. I don't mind. I mean, I'm not aligned with them at all, but I understand that they are aligned with certain voters. You can't say you can't say let's get rid of Blue Labour, because then you're getting rid of shitload of voters, and it's a shitload of voters. The problem is that that's the only people in Number 10. There's no one else. There's no one else. I mean, you could argue there's maybe, since September there's been a couple now, but they're not holding enough sway. Will the end of Starmer definitely be the end of Reeves too? You can never be certain, because we don't even know who's replacing him, but I would say yes. I'll be perfectly honest, right? If it were me, it's not me, because I've got just like Andy Burnham, I'm not an MP, so I'm not eligible, right? Nor am I even a Labour member at the moment, so I'm doubly not eligible to be leader. But if you do a thought experiment, if I were to be the next Labour Prime Minister to replace Starmer, I wouldn't keep Reeves. And I am someone who is happy with the job Reeves has done. Right. There are things I would like her to do differently. There would be conversations I would have with her. As you know, there's two big economic policies that I would like at least exploring. One is land tax, and I don't mind it being phased in. It doesn't have to be an all bells and whistles. We do it in one go. Just tackle land banking first of all. Do it on wasteful land use to begin with. So on. The other one is jobs. For my money, I would want the Treasury to be looking at feasible ways to make sure we can guarantee jobs. Because as soon as you can guarantee jobs, you solve a massive economic problem. So big economic problem that we have in this country. It's not really talked about, but it's absolutely huge. This year, we are expecting unemployment to go up further, and that's a good thing. But it's not a good thing for the workers losing their jobs, but it is a good thing for the economy. And the reason for that is it's because shit companies are going bust. Now, if a shit company goes bust, then better companies get more business. So that's better for the economy. But the problem is it leaves people unemployed. Whereas if you had a situation where we had an economic model that allowed for guaranteed jobs, you know, even if it, or guaranteed income, should we say, like not a universal basic income, but a guaranteed, so you get rid of unemployment altogether. There's no such thing as unemployment benefit. There might be out of work benefits for people who can't work, but that's a relatively small number of people. But for everyone else, it's like a guaranteed job or paid for training, like literally paid to go to college to train, right? You know, set up courses that are to help people get into work, but just get rid of unemployment. There's no such thing as unemployment. No such thing. Get rid of it altogether. And if you can do that, and I don't think it would cost as much as some people think, it would require some rewiring of the economy. I'm not saying it's a thing you could just insert into the current economic way of doing things. You would need a rewiring. But if you could do that, it allows you then to allow companies to go bust. Instead of panicking, if a company looks like it's going bust and it's going to shed 400 jobs in some town that can ill afford it, instead of the government panicking and having to give tax breaks and all sorts of shit to keep the company going, they can just say, well, we'll just guarantee those jobs. If that company's, if it's a shit company, it's a shit company, right? If the company cannot manage, then there are certain times when I would prop companies up, I will just be clear. So if you've got a major hit, like COVID, for example, I'm not saying, oh, well, any company that couldn't survive. You know, obviously, if you've got a sudden unexpected, that's not a shit company failing. But if it's a shit company, let them fail. And there's no argument against propping them up as long as you can guarantee incomes. Also, high unemployment drives down wages, which contributes to the cost of living crisis. Yes. Yes. Although I am also going to say Labour governments tend to boost incomes above inflation, as the current one is doing as well. And Conservative governments would bring back unemployment. So it would only be something that would be in place. I don't imagine a Conservative government would keep the system. They would go back to unemployment, name and shame type things. But, you know. Tax credits prop up shit companies. Yes, there's that as well. I mean, this is what I mean about it not costing as much as people think. If you were to work out how much it would cost to pay for people to train or to do a job that doesn't strictly think back to in America, the Great Depression, Roosevelt, with the what's it called, the New Deal, right, where he basically, the state paid men to do labour. Wasn't strictly needed. It was useful labour. We're not talking about the digging a hole one day and filling it in the next. It was useful. They were building things, and renovating buildings. It was just stuff that didn't technically need doing, but it was still useful. But what it meant was you had these people in work. These people they had dignity in work because they were doing work. It was useful work. They weren't sat around just getting money. So it was good for their dignity. It was good for the economy. So if you were to work out, so if you look at everyone that's unemployed right now and say, okay, we'll create some jobs for some, and we'll also create training places in college for others. So, you know, people are just going to get money for either doing this job we've got to do, which could be, you know, it could be filling in potholes. It could be useful stuff. You can get people to do useful stuff, you know, like road repairs or, you know, renovating buildings, stuff like that. But also other people to where we haven't got enough work for that, then go to college to train. That also has a cost. The state also has to pay for not only the cost of the courses and the teachers and everything. You need more teachers. They might have to drag me back into it. But you'd be paying those people a living wage as well. That's the whole idea. You'd be getting paid a living wage to go to college. So that all has a cost. And if you were to add it up, it probably comes to quite a high amount of money. But when you think, a lot of that money goes straight back to the Treasury because you've got income tax, you've got national insurance, they're spending it on the local economy, VAT, and then those businesses have the money and then they'll pay their business rates and so on. A lot of it ends up going back. But then, sorry, a long-winded way of saying it, but then you also have a situation where, because we have working tax credits, that's already money we're paying out anyway. We could maybe save on that. So I would say it would be, and if you could just let shit companies fail, because shit companies still have some customers, otherwise they know that's the point at which, when they have no customers, that's the point at which they're not a business anymore, right? And it's not a problem to anyone. But, you know, a shit company, while it's been a shit company, has customers, and those customers could be better served by a better company, right? So let the shit companies fail. That's better for the economy. The economy generates more money. You get more money coming into the treasury. You generate more jobs that way, and then what jobs it won't generate, let the state provide. That's my big thing. So my long-winded way, if I was going to be Prime Minister, that's what I would do. But I would have to get rid of Reeves, because she's also really unpopular, and it's not her fault. It's Starmer's fault. But politics is brutal. There's no room for sentiment in politics. Like, I think Keir Starmer has genuinely tried. I think he was a very successful lawyer. He made millions. He didn't go into politics to make a few quid, right? There's absolutely no evidence he's done anything to improve his wealth. I mean, he'll write memoirs and stuff, so he will make money out of it. But there's no evidence he's done anything particular. With Rishi Sunak, you couldn't say that. Some people might look at it, oh, well, he was really rich and he went into Parliament. That was very public, civic-minded of him. But it's like, yeah, but he was on the take, wasn't he? He did a lot of stuff that benefited his own companies, right? Or his wife's companies. There's nothing like that with Starmer. I'm completely satisfied that Starmer's gone into politics genuinely to change things for the better, that he cares about people. Even this latest shit with Mandelson. Why did he appoint Mandelson? To try and save people's jobs. And he's getting shit for it, right? So I have no resentment towards Starmer. I've no antipathy towards him. I think he's really tried. His heart's in the right place, but he was shit at politics. And worse than that, he surrounded himself by other people who were shit at politics to advise him on shit politics. So, yeah, I mean, but Reeves, I don't think Reeves can turn it round in terms of her reputation either. It's not her fault. But politics is harsh. And I did say at the time, years ago, there will come a point, I didn't imagine it'd be this quick, by the way. I said there will come a point where Starmer is a liability to Labour and I'll be the first calling for him to go. Because you have to. The amount of shit third parties of the government use for things the state should be doing is sickening. Yes, I agree. There are some things where I don't think the government should directly manage everything. You do need some organisations that are at arm's length, like HMRC, for example. There's lots of other ones as well. But they shouldn't be private. You shouldn't be contracting out. It should be, you can have organisations that are independent of government, but still public bodies. Public bodies, no profit. That basically, there's too much profit. Too much of what the Treasury spends goes into private pockets. And again, if you look at the cost of providing guaranteed incomes, so get rid of unemployment, there's no such thing as unemployment, guaranteed incomes at the living wage, which wouldn't be great. Okay, you could still have a situation where a shit company goes bust and someone who was on 40 grand a year is still going to be taking a massive pay cut. I'm not suggesting you guaranteed the wages they had. The state can't pay 40 grand for someone who's just maybe doing some busy work for them or at college. But a living wage, if you did that, I mean, we could actually easily afford to pay for that if we didn't have as much waste in government expenditure, not the sort of waste Reform UK talk about, but, paying private contractors to do things that we could do in-house or at least via an arm's length not-for-profit organisation. Working tax credits underscore poor wages. They do that as well. Yes. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, the thing about working tax credits that really pisses me off is it's like the people who get them are shamed by the media. And yet the reason they exist, that it's not there to supplement the wages of low paid workers. It's there to supplement the profits of the businesses who aren't paying enough. Now, I accept that there are small businesses out there who cannot afford to pay more. So I'm not suggesting if I were the Prime Minister, I would massively ramp up the minimum wage overnight, because I know that would trigger massive unemployment. That would not help those workers. It would help some workers who work for the companies that can afford it, and the ones who can't, you would just destroy businesses wholesale. So you can't do it, but you are effectively supplementing inefficient business practices. At the same time, we do also have to be aware that sometimes inefficient business practices are beneficial as well. There are some benefits to it, which sounds mad, but if you think about it this way, like your local butcher is inefficient, your local greengrocer is inefficient, your local baker is inefficient. Supermarkets are much more efficient. But does everyone want supermarkets and no independent butchers or grocers or anything like that? No, people. So there is an argument for some inefficiency if it provides more jobs, but not for the sake of providing more profit. Tony Blair and David Cameron are the only PMs to serve a full term this century. That is a very interesting point. Yes, you're right. Yes. And just to be clear, in this century, how many prime ministers we've had? We've had Blair, Brown, Cameron, May, Johnson, Truss. I know if you blinked, you missed her, but we did have Truss as Prime Minister, Sunak, Starmer. So 8 Prime Ministers. I mean, it's not certain yet, but I really can't see him lasting. Can you? And again, going back to the original points, I don't think it's all about the May elections. It's like this is only going to make the May elections worse. In fact, there's an argument that if you get rid of Starmer sooner, they might get a bit of a boost. It might actually be better at this point. Even though I've said in the past it's mad, in the recent past, it would be mad to go into those elections in May during having a leadership contest at the same time as election campaign is utterly crazy, by the way, and I don't think Labour will do it. But you do have to. Didn't Brown serve a full term? No. It was part way through. It was 2 years later. He became Prime Minister 2 years after into that term. So he didn't leave mid-term, but he did enter mid-term. So he didn't serve a full parliamentary term. Yeah, it's what was I saying? Sorry. Yeah, there's an argument that it'd actually be better for Labour to have no leader than to have Starmer as leader for the May elections. Goodness knows what it means about the by-election. But the by-election is a big one. If Labour lose the by-election, then I mean, they can't wait till the May. They can't wait till the May. The May elections are too important as well. They're too important. Usually, there's a bit of wisdom in if you know the May elections are going to be bad, get them out of the way, let the leader take the fall for them, and then replace them. But I think there's an argument again. But I think we're waiting on HMRC. I think at this point, Angela Rayner has to be the favourite. I don't care what the bookies say. Angela Rayner has to be the favourite to replace him, which means we're waiting on HMRC. Because if Streeting was in a good position to replace him, this would be the ideal time for him to move, because Rayner's in a slightly weaker position. She's not so weak that she would lose, but she will only get stronger if once HMRC have cleared her, put it that way. And yeah, pointing out Major wasn't this century. No, he stopped being Prime Minister in 1997. He did serve a full term, but it was not this century. Last comment here, I think, because we're sort of running out of time. Yes, Starmer's become a liability that I'm not a fan of, but as you said many times, Phil, He's done some good things that people may not see till later this year. That's why I think it's the wrong time. But I also don't think, even if people see them, that it'll be enough. I just think he's gone. I think attitudes against him are so hardened. If it was just that people thought he wasn't doing anything, then I would say hang on. But it's that people think he's actively screwing them over. And I don't think you get over that. I suspect that Shabana Mahmood will want to become PM, maybe, but will she have the support? If Streeting supports Rayner, if you've got that big block together, you could probably here's how it could happen. This is how politics should work, right? So let's say Streeting decides, yes, he's probably a liability himself now. So he goes to Rayner, says, let's cut a deal here. I'll be a chancellor or something, right? Whatever. Or just, stay on as health secretary. Whatever it is he wants, he says, I will lend my support to you, right? Then the two of them go to Shabana Mahmood and say, we're going to win. Basically, Rayner's going to win. They just say to her, Angela's going to win, right? She's going to have the overwhelming support of MPs. She already probably is the most popular amongst party members, but party members, they're not completely fixated. If one candidate has a massive swell of votes from the MPs at the MP stage, that can influence their vote as well. So you just don't rely on it. So if they go to Mahmood and say, look, Rayner's got the vast majority of MPs behind her and she's going to have the majority of party members, if we force a leadership contest, it's only going to cause damage to the party and Rayner's still going to end up as Prime Minister at the end of it, then for the sake of the party, again, you guarantee that Mahmood stays on as Home Secretary. You do that. You just do that. That's how politics works. You cut deals, right? Rayner says Mahmood can carry on as Home Secretary. Say there might be a few tweaks. Again, I don't know exactly what Rayner's policies would be, but there might be a few tweaks. But by and large, at the end of the day, the public want a hard-nosed bastard as Home Secretary anyway. Shabana Mahmood is a very sharp politician. She's not aligned with my political views, but you've got to recognise talent where you see it. She's a very sharp political operator herself. Keep her on as Home Secretary because there's no such thing as a bleeding heart Home Secretary anyway. So do that. Do a deal. Done. There's no more problems. Rayner can have her coronation. So that's what I would say. When Angry Pagan wants Miliband as Chancellor. In the world of deals, this is how I would see it. If I was advising Labour, this is if I was able to advise the people who are jostling here, I would say this. Rayner as Prime Minister, Streeting as Chancellor, Miliband to stay as Energy Secretary, Net Zero Energy Security Secretary, Mahmood to stay as Home Secretary. That's the deal. That's the deal that guarantees no messy leadership transition. That's the tidiest way to do it. But there we go. You say Streeting's too involved with Mandy. No, he's not. He was just friends with him. Remember, Peter Mandelson has, what he's done wrong has only emerged. The reason why people were giving him shit before, I'm not talking about the anti-Semites, I'm talking about the people who genuinely had issues with him, it was over the fact that he carried on being friends with Epstein after his conviction. Well, Streeting hasn't done that. Mandelson himself has not been and he still hasn't been implicated in any abuse of any girls or women or anyone. Right? His crime was being friends with Epstein, which he shouldn't have been, but people have friends, right? You don't give up friendship just because your friend might be a dickhead, right? Or some people do, some people don't. You can't. I don't do guilt by association. So what's Streeting supposed to be hung for? Being friends with someone who betrayed the government, but he didn't know it. No one knew it until last Friday. Would Rayner be the first ginger PM? I couldn't tell you. I'm not a historian. I have no idea. Maybe she could be the first ginger PM. Maybe that could be her first. But there we go. but describing Street in there as more remote, Machiavellian, he's not remote. I will say that he's not remote. He has a lot of backing in the parliamentary party, but Machiavellian in politics is actually Machiavellian in most areas of life is a very negative trait. In politics, it's absolutely essential. Not being Machiavellian means you're going to lose the election, and that doesn't help anyone. Well, it helps Nigel Farage. It doesn't help anyone that we care about. But anyway, we'll have to leave it there because I've got more stuff on. I think I should be on Politics Social unless Graham's gone to like China or something at 1 o'clock. Warren Pagans has ruined it all by saying Sir Robert Peel was ginger. Okay, fine. So she won't even be the first ginger. She'll be the first ginger woman. She can be the first ginger woman PM. If we're really desperate for a first here. But there we go. Clive Lewis for leader, absolutely guaranteed way to destroy the Labour Party. He has no support. And he's not like my very first quality for a leader has to be willing to be led. Otherwise they have no moral authority to expect others to follow them. This was initially my big issue with Corbyn. He had no moral authority to lead because he himself would not be led. It's really that simple. If you cannot expect others to follow if you will not follow. So no. But thankfully the system couldn't possibly make Clive Lewis leader anyway. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would like Clive Lewis to be a much more influential part of the Labour government, but he doesn't accept the responsibility that goes with it. So it's not feasible. Like if I was Prime Minister, I'd love Clive Lewis to be in my cabinet, but I couldn't put him there because he won't accept the responsibility of it. But anyway, we'll leave it there. Thanks for coming on, everyone. Have a great rest of day, and until next time, I'll see you later.